Hey, why is it that the Barossa Valley has these ancient, irreplaceable vineyards that you don't find anywhere else in the world, still in production?
The Barossa Valley is home to some of the oldest vineyards in the world of Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, Grenache, and of course here I'm standing in Mourvedre, planted in 1853. The reason we have these beautiful old vineyards here in the Barossa Valley is we have never had phylloxera in South Australia. Phylloxera being the grape louse that devours the roots of vines. Phylloxera indeed did come to Australia in the late 1800s, and it hit the eastern coast with more trade, etc. But the South Australian government passed an act called the Phylloxera Act in I think it was 1894, which forbade the transport of vines and vine material from interstate into South Australia. Also due to our rather geographical isolation, you might say, surrounded by sands and desert, and I can say that phylloxera hates sand, so there would be a strong chance that even if phylloxera did come to South Australia, this vineyard, the old garden, planted on 6 feet of sand over limestone, would likely survive. To be an old vine, you need a few things going in your favour. One of them is not to be grafted. With a graft is an inherent weakness at the junction. So being on own roots is a very good thing if you want to live a long life as a vine. The other thing you need is a dry, healthy environment. And of course, 6 feet of sand gives us that environment where if it does rain, the water drains away quickly and leaves this lovely, dry environment for the vines to thrive with no diseases. The third thing is an unlikely thing, but nevertheless really important. You need to survive the fads and fashions of the wine industry. And, Mourvedre, Mataro, this vineyard has managed to do that. It's lived for 100 years, over 100 years, going into fortified wines, when fortified was all the rage in Australia. Then in the 60s, it got transformed into being made into a dry table wine with the red wine table boom in Australia. That lasted through, and then took this vineyard over in 1998, and I was the first person to make it into a single vineyard table wine. People often ask me what quality is brought to the wine from old vines, and I really believe that the deep root systems that old vines inherently have mean that they are a lot less subject to the vagaries of the weather that's going on above the earth. So these roots are really deep. If it's a hot, dry summer, these roots aren't going to dry out as much as a young vine whose roots are very shallow and much closer to the surface. And I think this is the factor that brings a consistency of quality to wines made from old vines. Whether they last longer can be determined by winemaking techniques, but I certainly believe that the overall balance and consistency from year to year is greater in these old vines.